Hello. Today we have the pleasure of speaking with Mailan Doquang, a multifaceted author and artist whose work transcends traditional boundaries. Mailan is the author of 2 books, The Lithic Garden, Nature and the Transformation of the Medieval Church, which explores how medieval French churches integrated elements of nature into their architecture, and Blood Rubies, her debut thriller about a jewel heist gone terribly wrong.
Oh, Mailan holds a PhD in architectural history from the Institute of Fine Arts at NYU and a BA from McGill University, and also taught at prestigious universities across North America. Now a novelist, she blends her academic expertise with creative storytelling. In our conversation today, we'll delve into her dual career as both an academic and a novelist. Please join us in welcoming Mailan Doquang.
Woohoo!
Woo! Wow, thank you for that introduction, and thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming here, Mailan. We're so excited to have you at the Walsh Library today.
Yeah. So, pretty easy question to kick this thing off. What are your books about?
So I have 2 books.
Yeah.
The Lithic Garden came out with Oxford University Press in 2018, and it looks at the role of ornamental sculptures in the design of medieval churches in France. Specifically, it looks at foliate forms, not just their decorative functions, but also their symbolic functions and how they inflected the spaces of churches, and also how they created spatial hierarchies, both inside and outside the buildings. So that's book 1 on one end of the spectrum. And then on the opposite end is Blood Rubies, which came out last May with Mysterious Press. And it is a thriller, an action-driven thriller. It's a heist gone wrong entwined with a missing person story set in Bangkok and New York. And it's for fans of, the Ocean's movies with a little sprinkle of Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
I love it. And
That's a good combination.
That is a good combination. Amber and I had the pleasure of reading Blood Rubies, as you all should as well.
Yeah.
That's perfectly described. We are fortunate enough to have both Lithic Garden and Blood Rubies in our collection. But based on those pitches, what made you go from being an academic to writing fiction? As you mentioned, there's one end of the spectrum is one, and then on the other is your other book.
Mm-hmm. It's light years. They're light years apart. As you said, I was an academic for a really long time. I spent my career researching, writing about, and teaching the history of art and architecture. That involved a fair amount of publishing, including articles and essays and book reviews, catalog entries. And then The Lithic Garden came out. And after that book came out, I realized that what I loved most about being an academic wasn't the research or teaching. It was really the writing, the process of creating a narrative and putting it down on the page. I also decided at that time that I didn't want to do any more academic writing for a slew of reasons, but primarily because my area of expertise is really niche, and I had this sense that I was always addressing the same very narrow group of people in my writing and at conferences, and I really wanted to try writing things that were just more broadly accessible. So I don't want to say that writing a novel was a whim, but it sort of was. Yeah. I didn't have any experience in this area. I'd never taken a creative writing course. I knew nothing about the commercial publishing industry. I just started writing. And as soon as I did, I was hooked. And so now, all these years later, all of a sudden, I'm living my best life as a novelist.
Awesome. So in that regards, do you find that the discipline of academic writing has helped or hindered your creativity in fiction writing?
It's been a huge help in some regards. So for me, writing is writing. It doesn't matter if I'm writing an academic piece or fiction. They're both a huge amount of work, and there are no shortcuts, no hacks, unfortunately. I just have to sit down and commit to doing it. So the discipline that I learned as an academic really served me well when I started writing fiction. That said, they're so different in terms of content and tone and writing style. An academic book is so formal. And there are all these components that are really specific to that kind of writing, like historiography and bibliography and citations and appendices. And then on the flip side, with a novel, there were all these new components that I had to worry about, like having a story to tell, a plot, right? And then I had to populate that story with compelling characters. And because I write thrillers, pacing is a huge component of that kind of writing. So in terms of creative inspiration, I was drawing on, other authors who work in this genre. I've been a fan of heists for a really long time. My mom used to bring home actually these books by a French author, Maurice Leblanc, who writes a series with a main character called Arsène Lupin. I don't know if you watched the Lupin series on Netflix that came out a few years ago. It's fabulous, and it's inspired by these books by Leblanc, which are quite old. They're a century old at least. And it's a gentleman thief and a master of disguises. And I was so enamored with this character when I was young. And it's so I continued to kind of read in this genre. And so when it came time to writing a novel, I drew a lot of inspiration from that author and from many others. And I was able to marry that sort of creative impulse with the discipline that I learned as an academic, and it's been a really kind of fruitful experience for me.
That's great.
Awesome.
Mailan, so you mentioned your academic expertise focuses primarily in France, right? And then Blood Rubies, of course, as you mentioned, takes place in New York and Thailand. So what role does the setting play in your writing, both in your fiction and your scholarly work?
So I'm an architecture nerd and an architectural historian. And so place was always paramount in my academic work. It's where I started. It's, I would pick a building or a group of buildings, and then I would go from there. And because that was my training, that's how I started when I sat down to write fiction. Most authors I know either start with an idea for a character or an idea for a plot. I'm a bit of an outlier because I start with setting. I didn't know what the story was going to be about. I didn't know who was going to be in it. I just knew that I wanted to write a story that was set in Bangkok and New York. They're two of my favorite cities. I've been a New Yorker for most of my adult life, on and off. And Bangkok is where my husband did his dissertation research. So he lived there for a while, and I was lucky enough to be able to go and visit, and really fell in love with the place. So yeah, when I sat down to write a book, the first decision I made was to set it in these two cities that I love so much and know so well. And then, and that became the center of the story. And what surprised me was how that decision about setting then impacted so many other aspects of the book. And I'll just give you one example, but it really impacted the plot. So I assumed, because I'm a fan of heists, early on it's like, oh, I'm going to write a heist. But I assumed because of my background in the arts that I'd be writing an art heist. Like that seems like a natural thing to do. The problem was that I already had Bangkok as my primary setting. I already had my heart set on it. And Bangkok's not a great art city. It's fine. It's got art like every major city, but it's not an art capital the way that New York or, Paris or London are. What it is, though, is a global center for gemstones. Gem cutting, gem processing are both big business in Bangkok. And anyone who's been there knows it's a fabulous place to buy jewelry. So I pivoted from art heist to jewel heist, and that was 100% based on my setting choices.
Right. Oh, that's neat. Well, because you don't hear that often of like starting with setting, and in a way, it's like, now that I'm thinking about Blood Rubies, the setting is just as much of a character.
100%. Yeah.
the human characters.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. I work hard on my settings, but it's true that it is unusual. I remember the first time I said it out loud, that I start with setting. It was during a podcast, and the host looked at me like I had horns growing out of my head.
Really?
Yes, and she had interviewed hundreds of authors, and she said I was the first person who started with setting. So it is unusual.
Well, unusual is a strength.
Yeah, it's welcomed.
Helps you stand out and
Absolutely. That's
unique.
With the way my brain works, I would probably start with setting too, just to get me immersed into the story.
Right?
I would feel like that would be normal.
You would be unusual.
So what were some of the challenges of moving from academic publishing to the fiction world?
There are a lot of challenges because the two processes are really different and the goals are different. So to publish an academic book, an author or a scholar approaches an editor directly at an academic press. You send them a précis or a proposal. If they like what they see, they'll ask for the full manuscript and then send it off for peer review. And then if the news is good from the peer reviewers, then they'll move forward with the project. With commercial fiction, there's an intermediary between authors and editors, and those are the literary agents. And they can be an insurmountable barrier for many aspiring authors, largely because there are far more aspiring authors than there are literary agents who are looking for new clients. So if someone is trying to publish, to move forward in traditional publishing, this isn't the case, obviously, with self-publishing, it can be really challenging to connect not just with an agent, but with the right agent who, represents your genre and who's well connected in that genre, and whose vision aligns with yours creatively. And then there's the goal of academic publishing versus commercial publishing. I don't know about all presses, but with Oxford University Press, they have their own endowment. And so my understanding is that they don't rely on book sales to stay afloat. But with a commercial press, their goal is to monetize a product. And that brings in all these concerns that are definitely not even in the picture as an academic. So, for example, you could have a fantastic book with really compelling characters. You could have a strong authorial voice, and an editor might still not pick up your book. And there can be, all kinds of reasons for it that have nothing to do with the book itself. It could be, it could be something like they don't see a place for it in the market.
Right.
Or other books have come out that are similar in theme. So yeah, there are so many obstacles to both kinds of publishing. I would say I definitely had a harder time breaking through with fiction than I did with my academic book, which actually was I was lucky. It was a very easy process with Oxford.
Okay, that thank you for saying that. It is unique, and those are some important words of wisdom for aspiring authors, both academically and fiction. But yeah, speaking of your fiction work, so Mailan, we're often led to believe that first novels are somewhat autobiographical, and in Blood Rubies, we have the protagonist Rune, who is a total bad A. This is still a University Libraries podcast. Along with her boyfriend Kit, a devoted brother and partner. So in creating these characters, did you draw inspiration from yourself or any of the people in your life?
Hannah, I'm a secret jewel thief. That is my secret life. You think I'm an academic, but in fact...
Now I'm offended you didn't bring any jewels.
I know.
Share today.
Rune, as you said...
my roofie ready.
Rune, as you said, is a bad A. She's a criminal. She breaks into hotel rooms.
She does.
She sure does.
She cracks safes. She zips around on a motorcycle. She picks fights with people.
Yeah.
Verbal and physical.
Yes.
We have nothing in common. I've done none of those. I mean, maybe picking fights. I don't know. But I've really, no, we're really different. I don't know if, subconsciously I was writing this character because I have this secret wish
Your spirit animal.
Yeah, exactly. Or secret wish to be, living on the edges of morality in a more morally gray area. But what I can say is that she's a huge amount of fun to write because she is so different. So we are very different in just about every way. But I will say that both Rune and I are mixed race. Rune is half white, half Asian. Her mother is American. Her father is Thai. She grew up in New York, never feeling like she quite fit in. Then she moved to Bangkok, only to realize that she really doesn't fit in there either. And some people have assumed that I wrote a mixed race character because I'm mixed race. And, it would seem like I should say yes because it would seem like it would be a natural choice. But just to circle back to the importance of setting, Rune is mixed race primarily because of the setting. Because I wanted a main character who made sense in both New York and Bangkok.
Right.
Once I made that choice, I leaned into it, and then I was able to draw on some of my experiences growing up mixed race in Canada and some of the experiences that my siblings have had and other mixed race people I know. No one I know has been through the traumatic experiences that I describe in the book.
Thankfully.
Exactly, yeah. But certainly some of the microaggressions are things that across the board, people I spoke to have experienced. So that's Rune. And then everyone else, there are many, I'd say, bad guys in my book. And I think like many authors, I draw inspiration on the people around me, family, friends, strangers on the train, the person next to me at Starbucks. And if you cross an author, you end up 100%. Dead in our books.
So what you're saying is don't cut the line.
That's right. You'll be painted in a very unflattering light in my next book.
I love that. What did you enjoy the most about writing Blood Rubies? And are there elements of fiction writing that you find surprisingly challenging?
So the best part is the discovery process. Most writers break down into two types. There are the plotters, these are the people who create outlines, sometimes really detailed, like 50 pages. And then there are the people like me, the pantsers. We fly by the seat of our pants. And so the story comes out, emerges during the writing process. So every day for me is a discovery because I don't know what's happening next until I actually write it. Sure. So that part is phenomenal, and it's what keeps me interested in this kind of writing. The best way I can describe it is it's like watching a movie, only doing it really, really slowly because I have no idea what's happening next.
Right.
Yeah.
Just a quick side note. I wonder if that draws upon your interest in heist plots, because in a heist you don't know what's happening next, and that perhaps has influenced someone of your writing style.
I think so. I wasn't much of an outliner even as an academic. I'm a very intuitive writer. And but I love surprises. And so both in terms of the content of what I read and in terms of the process of the creative process. So it's definitely, it's so much fun.
Cool. And so do you have any advice for academics who might be considering a pivot to creative writing, as you yourself have accomplished?
So I would say know your genre. I think anybody who is in a writing-intensive field like I was has writing chops. Obviously not everyone can be a Nobel laureate in literature, but I think if someone is practiced in academic writing, you can certainly make a switch to more journalistic writing or fiction or whatever. As long as you're immersed in your genre, you have to know what the expectations are in that genre, and also you have to know your audience, your readership. But that would be my biggest piece of advice.
Awesome. So Mailan, what's next for you?
I'm so glad you asked. I recently got the edits back for my second book from my editor.
What? Oh my goodness, we are finding this out right now.
Breaking news.
Is it a sequel to Blood Rubies?
It is a sequel to Blood Rubies. So Rune is back. She is in Paris. It opens at the Louvre. So I'm working on those edits now. I'm really excited that there's that story is continuing. And then I'm working on a standalone with a brand new protagonist. It's quite different. It's less action-driven, more of a psychological thriller. And it's about an Asian American museum curator whose life derails after she becomes the victim of what she believes is a hate crime.
Oh.
Yeah. So keyword is what she believes. So that,
A little bit
that
of an
is
unreliable narrator.
yes, exactly. Exactly.
Those sorts of
Same.
number two. That's so exciting.
That's so exciting, my
Two big things come.
Two big things.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Oh man, well thank you for sharing that with us. I'm so excited till we get those two new books in the library and for everyone to purchase them anywhere. Barnes & Nobles, Amazon, they're available in all those places.
Yeah.
But Mailan, we do have two last very important questions. I'll go first. So you mentioned that you were born in Canada.
Yes.
So what are your opinions on poutine?
It's the best thing ever. I mean, French fries, brown sauce, and squeaky cheese. It's a magical combination, and you can't knock it till you've tried it, and no one should yuck my yum.
Never.
Have either of you tried poutine, and what are your thoughts?
I've never.
I did try it. I was in Montreal last year. But you know what? I think I had it I went to one of those popular places. There's a line at the door. It was very late at night.
That's the time to have a poutine.
and it did definitely seem like a late at night food, a good for a late at night food.
It's also more of a winter food. So I don't know if you were there in the summer, but yeah, it would be very heavy in the summer. But if you're thinking, Canadian winters, you want sustenance.
What kind of fry is in that? Like what kind of cut of potato?
It's usually like a thicker cut
steak
fry.
cut?
Yes, yeah. So not
like
a teeny
swords.
tiny one.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yes, yeah.
And you eat it like with a fork.
Yes.
Yeah. It'd be too messy with your hands.
Oh yeah, I can.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So a little birdie told me to ask you this, Jen. Because we both have a love of Peloton. And who's your favorite Peloton instructor? I really need to know this.
Huge fan of Peloton. I have been for so long. I am a very loyal Ali Love rider.
Okay,
Yes.
that's good.
How about you? Who's your favorite?
Cody.
Oh, I love Cody.
And
There's a British Hannah I really love.
I like her.
I like her a lot
I like
too.
her.
She really looks like she's doing the ride with you.
Yes.
I appreciate that.
Tunde is also like that.
Oh,
but
yes.
she lies about her counting, and so I don't trust her. But she's great.
Oh, does she not keep
She does
track
the
of the time?
and one.
Oh, no.
And one.
No.
Like,
That's so wrong.
Narrator, more like unreliable Peloton instructor. That's
Right.
Peloton for your next
Yes.
novel. Never-ending Peloton ride. Ooh, torture.
Love it.
Okay, so Mailan, do you have any social media accounts where the listeners can follow you?
Yes, I'm on most platforms, Instagram, X, and Facebook, and my handle is author Mailan. And you can also find me at my website, mailandoquang.com.
Awesome.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. This was so much fun.
This was
So
fun.
fun.
All right, guys, we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.